What's up, guys? It's me again. Alrighty, so yesterday we read Genesis chapter 23, and that was a really, really short chapter. It talked about, how old Sarah was when she died, and Abraham buying the cave with the field from some people in Canaan. I think they were called the sons of Het. Right, he bought it for 400 shekels, which this Bible version says was about 10 pounds of silver. So, we're going to go ahead and start Genesis chapter 24. By now, Avraham was old, advanced in years, and Adonai had blessed Avraham in everything. Avraham said to the servant who had served him the longest, who was in charge of all he owned, this same servant that he's talking about right now, was the one that he was talking about to God when he was like, God, how are you going to give me all of this stuff when I'm not even going to be able to pass it down to, somebody from my own body? I'm going to have to give it away to a servant who's not even mine, who doesn't even share my name. And don't get me wrong, that servant was, faithful and a great servant, I'm sure, because he's the one that Abraham is about to send on this mission. But, that's the same guy. Anyway, Avraham said to the servant who had served him the longest, who was in charge of all he owned, "Put your hand under my thigh, because I want you to swear by Adonai, God of heaven and God of earth, that you will not choose a wife for my son from among the women of the Canaanite, among whom I am living." Now, when somebody, this is a cultural thing, when somebody tells you to put your hand under their thigh, that is basically like, it's like saying, I need you to swear to me that XYZ. I need you to promise me XYZ. It's basically like, under the thigh is a very, it's a very personal, intimate place. So to allow somebody to put their hand on your thigh shows, especially like the under thigh, like very close to the private area. That's a very intimate spot. You only let people that you deem trustworthy and, close to you, let you touch you in places like that. That's the whole gist of it, right? So he's saying, hey, listen, I trust you and I know that you are going to do what I tell you to do. So promise me this. Continuing on. But that you will go to my homeland, to my kinsmen, to choose a wife for my son Yitz'chak. The servant replied, Suppose the woman isn't willing to follow me to this land. Must I then bring your son back to the land from which you came? Avraham said to him, See to it that you don't bring my son back there. Adonai, the God of heaven, who took me away from my father's house and away from the land I was born in, who spoke to me and swore to me, I will give this land to your descendants. He will send his angel ahead of you, and you are to bring a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is unwilling to follow you, then you are released from your obligation under my oath. Just don't bring my son back there. The servant put his hand under the thigh of Avraham his master and swore to him concerning the matter. So, one thing that we can get from this, right, is when, whether it be God or somebody sends you on a mission, and it's a mission for God, right? God will always send an angel ahead of you, and we'll see that happen a lot of times, multiple times through the Bible, especially during the Exodus from Egypt, right? God sent his angel, right, who came in his name to light the way for the Israelites when they were on their escapades for 40 years in the wilderness. God sent that angel ahead of them to light their way. It was a pillar of cloud during the day, and it was a pillar of fire during the night. Now, I don't think that it was literally a huge pillar of fire, right? Ancient language and modern day language are not really the same. They're the same, but they're different, but they're still the same. People who've seen that movie, you'll catch why I say that. But
it is a pillar of fire, but it's not a literal pillar of fire, right? It's some kind of light that was like a pillar of light, right? And they call it a pillar of fire because a fire gives light, right? And it was probably red, orange, yellowish kind of color, whatever. But God, when you're on a mission for God, God will send an angel or angels ahead of you to make sure that the job gets done, right? Now, most of the time, those angels are handling the spiritual side of it, right? But God calls you to walk the physical side of it. That way, it can be proven to other people, right, that God works in the physical as well as the spiritual. It's all just to prove God's glory, to prove his existence, to prove his glory, and all of that good stuff.
Anyway, then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and all kinds of gifts from his master, got up and went to Aram Naharaim, to Nahor's city. Toward evening, when the women go out to draw water, he had the camels kneel down outside the city by the well. He said, Adonai, God of my master Avraham, please let me succeed today, and show your grace to my master Avraham. Here I am, standing by the spring, as the daughters of the townsfolk come out to draw water. I will say to one of the girls, please lower your jug so that I can drink. If she answers, yes, drink, and I will water your camels as well, then let her be the one you intend for your servant Yitz'chak. This is how I will know that you have shown grace to my master. So here we see Abraham's servant, what modern day Christians would call fleecing God, and that term fleecing comes from what's his name? Oh, he tore down the statue of Baal in Judges. What's his name? I can't remember. It'll come back to me. Gideon. That's what his name is, Gideon. So he had a fleece, right? And he put it on the ground, and he was like, Lord, if you want me to do this, then make all of the ground wet, but leave the fleece dry, right? So he left the fleece on the ground overnight. When he came back, there was dew on the ground, right? And there was no dew on the fleece. And so he's like, oh, okay, so God's talking to me. But he's like, God, I just want to make sure that it's you, right? And see, he didn't fleece God once and trust that it was God. He doubted. So he's like, God, okay, I see that you did this, but just to make sure that it's you, this time make only the fleece have dew, and then the rest of the ground be dry. And so another night passes. He wakes up. He sees that the fleece is wet with the dew, and the surrounding ground is dry. So he's like, okay, this is God. This is God working. This is God speaking to me. So we see that Abraham's servant is fleecing God by saying, God, when these women come out to get water, I'm going to do this, this, and that. And if she says exactly these words, or she does exactly this action, that I'm going to know that it is you showing grace to my master. So if there's ever and I'm not saying to do this all the time, right? Because it may not necessarily be a good thing to fleece God, because testing God in certain ways isn't a good thing to do. Testing him in other ways is good, but this is one thing that I'm kind of fuzzy about. I don't know if it's a good thing to fleece him or not, because to ask him to do something so specific when he can do a plethora of different things to prove a point or to show his grace towards you. I think to fleece him in that way is almost like putting him in a box. But I don't know everything, so I may be wrong on that. Anyway, before he had finished speaking, Rivka, who is Rebecca, by the way, the daughter of Betuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her jug on her shoulder. The girl was very beautiful, a virgin, never having had sexual relations with any man. She went down to the spring, filled her jug, and came up. The servant ran to meet her and said, "Please give me a sip of water from your jug to drink." "Drink, my lord," she replied, and immediately lowered her jug onto her arm and let him drink. When she was Through letting him drink, she said, I will also draw water for your camels until they have drunk their fill. She quickly emptied her jug into the trough, then ran again to the well to draw water, and kept on drawing water for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence, waiting to find out whether Adonai had made his trip successful or not. So literally, right, he's praying this to God. He's like, God, please let this happen. Please let this happen. Whoever is the one who does this, let this be the one. And before the words could finish coming out of his mouth, here comes Rebecca with a jug of water, and he's like, oh, whoa, that was quick. Let's check it out. And he's like, Miss Lady, please give me some water to drink. And she's like, yeah, bro, I got you. She pulls it down, gives him some water. He's drinking. He finally gets done, and then she's like, I'm going to get your camel some water too. And she's not like, slowly walking and chilling, getting these camels of water. She's like on a mission. And I mean, he was probably dying of thirst at that point, but it doesn't specifically say that. Anyway, when the camels were done drinking, the man took a gold nose ring weighing 1/5 of an ounce and 2 gold bracelets weighing 4 ounces and asked, Whose daughter are you? Tell me, please, is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She answered, I am the daughter of Betuel, the son of Milcah, bore to Nahor, adding, we have plenty of straw and fodder and a room for staying overnight. It's almost like God had planned this out, step by step. The man bowed his head and prostrated himself before Adonai. So, I don't know if this is the Hebrew word that he translates to prostrate, which means to worship, right? There is a word in the Bible that is, worship, right, in English. But to worship, right, implies that you are prostrating yourself, right? So a tradition of man that was made by the Roman Catholic Church, which wasn't a common theme or a common thing to do in the early church, right? Around when Jesus had ascended and the gospel was being spread, like that early church and before that time, when somebody said to worship the Lord, right? That was prostrating yourself. That means getting on the ground, right? And praising God. Now, why is that? God is the Most High, and you can't lift something up, right? Who's already at the top. You can't lift God any higher than he is because he's the Most High. That's why you got to get low, right? You can't lift up an authority who's at the highest point, right? He's as high up as you can go. Whereas if you're standing and you're worshiping, right, that means you're not putting yourself above him. You're getting below. That's why if you see the word worship the Lord, prostrate yourself to the Lord and, prayer and supplication, all of that extra stuff. But Roman Catholic Church, being the evil thing it is, enforced people to stand when they worship. They changed the definition of worship to standing. I don't know why. But they also changed a lot of other things about what God has said to do in his book. And if people had not listened to them, they would have been murdered. The Roman Catholic Church, started by Constantine, the emperor, enforced that Sabbath worship, right, which is the true worship of God on the throne, right? Jesus worshipped on the Sabbath. Jesus worshipped every day, but especially on the Sabbath, right? But the Roman Catholic Church stopped that worship on the Sabbath, right? And anybody who would worship on the Sabbath would have been killed. And they changed that day to Sunday, right? And they changed that to keep all of their subjects who were not Christian, right, following God's instruction, to keep them under control. And because all of those other nations that they were trying to keep under control were pagan nations, believing in more than one God, their
their God, like their God of gods, basically, he was worshipped on Sunday. So in order to keep everybody under one rule, they changed everything. Instead, they compromised basically. Instead of getting rid of their pagan culture, right? Their false god worship culture, I should say. Just because something is pagan doesn't mean that it's against God. But their false god worship, they brought their false god worship culture and took the true way to worship God and they mixed it together. Now, what does God say about mixing light and darkness, right? You can't do it. You're either good or you're bad. A little off topic, but I just wanted to let you guys know about worship. Anyway, so he sees what's going on, Abraham's servant, and he gets right down on his knees and he starts giving thanks to God because literally everything that he had asked God to show him, which woman for Isaac to marry, it's just bam, 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 like lined up, like it's just right there. Anyway, then he said, "Blessed be Adonai, God of my master Avraham, who has not abandoned his faithful love for my master, because Adonai has guided me to the house of my master's kinsman." The girl ran off and told her mother's household what had happened. Rivkah had a brother named Lavan, or Laban, if you're an English speaker. When he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists besides, and when he heard his sister Rivkah's report of the man he had said to her, or of what the man had said to her, he ran out to the spring and found the man standing there by the camels. "Come on in," he said, "you whom Adonai has blessed. Why are you standing outside when I have made room in the house and prepared a place for the camels?" So the man went inside, and while the camels were being unloaded and provided straw and fodder, water was brought for him to wash his feet and the feet of the men with him. But when a meal was set before him, he said, "I won't eat until I say what I have to say." Lavan said, "Speak." He said, "I am Avraham's servant. Adonai has greatly blessed my master, so that he has grown wealthy. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male and female slaves, camels and donkeys. Sarah, my master's wife, bore my master a son when she was old, and has given him everything he has. My master made me swear, saying, 'You are not to choose a wife for my son from among the women of the Canaani, among whom I am living. Rather, you are to go to my father's house, to my kinsman, to choose a wife for my son.' I said to my master, 'Suppose the woman isn't willing to follow me?' Avraham answered me, 'Adonai, in whose presence I live, will send his angel with you to make your trip successful, and you are to pick a wife for my son from my kinsman in my father's house. This will release you from your obligation under my oath, but if when you come to my kinsman they refuse to give her to you, this too will release you from my oath.' So today I came to the spring and said, 'Adonai, God of my father Avraham, if you are causing my trip to succeed in its purpose, then here I am standing by the spring. I will say to one of the girls coming out to draw water, "Let me have a sip of water from your jug." If she answers, "Yes, drink, and I will water your camels as well," then let her be the woman you intend for my master's son.' And even before I had finished speaking to my heart, there came Rivkah going out with her jug on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water. When I said to her, 'Please let me have a drink,' she immediately lowered the jug from her shoulder and said, 'Drink, and I will water your camels as well.' So I drank, and she had the camels drink too. I asked her, 'Whose daughter are you?' She answered, 'The daughter of Betuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah bore to him.' Then I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her wrists, bowed my head, prostrated myself before Adonai, and blessed Adonai, God of my master Avraham, for having led me in the right way to obtain my master's brother's granddaughter for his son. So now, if you people intend to show grace and truth to my master, tell me. But if not, tell me, so that I can turn elsewhere." Lavan and Betuel replied, "Since this comes from Adonai, we can't say anything to you, either bad or good. Rivkah is here in front of you. Take her and go. Let her be your master's son's wife, as Adonai has said." When Avraham's servant heard what they said, he prostrated himself on the ground to Adonai. So, again, right, not only did he need to find this woman, which he did, but he also had to get the permission to bring her back. Now, if her parents, right, were unwilling, then obviously there's no pressure and he's free from his oath. There's no forcing here, right? Even though it's God ordained. If they want to refuse, they have the choice to refuse. We all have the choice to refuse. But we also have the choice to accept what God has for us. And that's a very important thing. God is not about forcing you to make any kind of decision. God is so open with you, right? Even when you're not open with him, he will tell you what he wants you to do, and he will tell you the consequences of doing so and the consequences of not doing so, right? Up front, there's no kind of hidden fees, if you will. There's no kind of anything like that with God. It's all right on the table. It's all set up, right? If you want to drink from the cup, then you're able to drink from the cup. All you got to do is ask, right? And that's one thing that I want people to get and to understand about God. If anybody, right, is forcing you into something, right, forcing you to have a relationship with them, forcing you to this, that, and the other, that is not love, right? That is not love. God loves you. God loves me. God loves the whole world so much, right? He gave his only son so that we could have life. Now, if we don't want that life, that is our choice, right? And he accepts that choice. And he's got a place for people who have that choice. Granted, it's not a very good place, right? But what? Even if you don't love God, God loves you. And he loves you enough to allow you to choose whether you want life or whether you want death. And he will give it to you.
Where are we at? There we go. Then the servant brought out silver and gold jewelry, together with clothing, and gave them to Rivkah. He also gave valuables to her brother and mother. He and his men then ate and drank and stayed the night. In the morning they got up, and he said, "Send me off to my master." Her brother and mother said, "Let the girl stay with us a few days, at least 10. After that she will go." He answered them, "Don't delay me, since Adonai has made my trip successful, but let me go back to my master." They said, "We will call the girl and see what she says." So, right, they want her to stay. He's ready to go. He's like, "Please don't delay me. I got to get back. I got to finish this mission." And, obviously they are about to probably never see, their sister/daughter again. So they're like, "Can she just stay like a couple more days?" He's like, "Nah, dude, we got to go." So what do they do? Instead of forcing her to come, they get her to make the decision, right? It's all about that free will. They called Rivkah and asked her, "Will you go with this man?" And she replied, "I will." So they sent their sister Rivkah away with her nurse, Avraham's servant, and his men. They blessed Rivkah with these words, "Our sister, may you be the mother of millions, and may your descendants possess the cities of those who hate them." Then Rivkah and her maids mounted the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rivkah and went on his way. Meanwhile, Yitz'chak one evening, after coming along the road from Beer Lachairoi, he was living in the Negev, and I said in one of the chapters earlier that the Negev, if you hear Negev, that means the southern country of Israel, the southern mountainous region of, I think it's a desert mountain region of Israel. I've never been there, right? But I've read. Anyway, he was living in the Negev, went out walking in the field, and as he looked up, he saw camels approaching. Rivkah too looked up, and when she saw Yitz'chak, she quickly dismounted the camel. She said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" When the servant replied, "It's my master," she took her veil and covered herself. The servant told Yitz'chak everything he had done. Then Yitz'chak brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rivkah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. Thus was Yitz'chak comforted for the loss of his mother. And that is Genesis chapter 24. So we see here how amazing, how amazing God is for giving people a choice. We also see here that God is a part of every inch of your life, whether you accept that or not. Isaac had
no clue what was going on, I'm sure. He's just chilling or whatever. Maybe he talked about it with his dad before. He's like, maybe Abraham's like, son, bro, we need to find you a lady or something like that. Maybe he didn't even know, right? Maybe Abraham didn't even talk to him about it. Maybe it was like almost like a surprise kind of thing. But we can see, we can see God in Abraham with this, right? Now, I don't know how long it's been since Isaac's, since Sarah was dead, right? I don't know how much time had passed. But him marrying this woman is the one thing that comforted him over his mother's death. So up until the point that he met Rebecca, right, he was sad, distraught, I would say, about his mother. And rightfully so, it's his mom. You know what I mean? And the fact that God was working, even though it may not necessarily been his idea to, maybe it was his idea, but maybe it wasn't necessarily his idea to have Abraham's servant go and do all of that. I think that no matter what woman, that servant brought home to Isaac would have been a perfect person for him. But God wanted to work through Rebecca, and so that's what happened. And one thing we can learn from that is let's take it from Isaac's perspective, you know what I mean? Things are sad sometimes, but God's working behind the scenes to bring you happiness, to bring you reconciliation, to bring you, I hope this word is the right word, consolement, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but he wants to console you. He wants to comfort you. You know what I mean? He wants to see you happy. And as we can see the servant traveling, far lengths to do that, God is going to do the same. And for those of us who are, sad and upset, especially when it comes to relationships and stuff like that, because I haven't really had a lot of relationships in my life, but I know how hard it is to see good in not being in a relationship, and I also know how hard it is to watch other people be in a relationship, in a loving relationship at that, and not be in one yourself. That's very hard. I'll be honest with you, I was thinking about it earlier today before I got up and made this video. Like, God, I know you've got good things planned for me, but how long? You know what I mean? How long? There are people all over the planet who don't deserve the kind of relationship that I'm searching for, and they have it already, not prepared at all, and I'm not prepared, and I probably don't even deserve it, but why is it that I am not getting it, and these people who also don't deserve it do? That's a question I struggle with all the time. And I may never know the answer, but all I know is that whatever the situation, God is using it for our good. So one thing I can tell you is just stay patient. Another thing I can tell you is just keep asking, keep knocking, and you'll receive. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Today is day 11, which means yesterday was the 10th. That was the first day of having the lamb. Today would be the second day of having the lamb. Let's see, the 12th, 13th, the 14th. So 3 more days until Passover. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys later today. If you need a prayer, hit me up in the comments, send me a DM, it don't matter. I'll pray for you. See you guys.